Good morning, everybody. Dave Savage here, CEO of Mortgage Coach. Myself and Todd Bookspan are facilitating today's call. What's up, my man, Todd?
Hey, as always, it's best way to end my week is here with all of you.
Good. And then as co-mentors today and leaders, we have Kristen Messerly. Hey, Kristen. Good to have you.
Morning.
Morning. And then we have the one and only Michelle Town. Hey, Michelle.
Morning, everybody. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. So for anyone who's new to this call, it is a mastermind style call, and you're super lucky. You've got Michelle, $100 million a year top producer. You've got Todd, used to be top producer, now coach and founder of Win by Noon. But by the way, guys, when I say Todd was a top producer, his team, does like 500 units a year. I mean, is that right?
That is accurate.
Yeah.
They're out there doing all the hard work.
Yeah. So one of the highest volume teams in the country. And then we have next generation leader, Kristen Messerly, and founder of modernloanofficer.com. And I think you were on the last call too. Also looking at who we have as participants in today's mastermind, we've got a lot of super smart and successful loan officers and industry leaders. I see Tammy Butler on today's call. Tammy, whenever you have something to share, please raise your hand and we'll unmute you. The topic today, and I'm going to show my desktop real quick for anyone that hasn't been following our Facebook group. You should be, but let me pull up my desktop. Todd, if you can confirm that you can see my desktop.
I can see your desktop.
Cool. So today's number one topic is going to be how to learn anything faster and more effectively. I put that post up. We got some good comments and suggestions. We'll talk about those. I also threw up something here saying, what are you currently working to learn, or a skill or habit that you're currently trying to improve? It's not too late, so this will be mastermind style. Please feel free to jump in and share your thought. Before we jump into that topic, I want to make sure I shine a light on a few things from the community over the past week. I did a number of new interviews this week, but I would just say this one called It's Time to Work Harder and Smarter with Jeremy Forcier. I mean, absolute required interview for everybody in the mortgage business. I think it's a great call. Jeremy is very transparent, and he shared some strategies and ideas that are super on point. Also, I did post a couple new articles. I posted one that just showcases the top mortgage coach interviews for Q1 2018. Check that out. Also, Kristen Messerly and I recently posted an article, The Essential Disciplines of the Modern Mortgage Professional. Don't miss those. And then one more that I wanted to make sure I shined the light on, although I did a lot of great stuff this week. This one right here with Jesse. Todd, were you aware of an event that went on last week called the Inman Disconnect event? Is that something you're familiar with?
Only because you asked if anyone had gone to it, but I had never heard of it. And, I was super intrigued by it for sure.
Well, put it this way, Inman, which I think is the best event in the real estate space, put on an invite-only event. There was about 150 leaders and executives, and it was who's who in the real estate space, CEOs, leaders, basically the disruptors of the real estate space. And then they did something, Todd, that you and I are going to dig. We're actually going to want to kind of borrow from it. They created a manifesto called the Parker Principles. And so this group got together for 3 days and came up with this manifesto of what are the things that need to change in the real estate space. So one of the guys who was a former mortgage coach user and now he's a technology innovator, Jesse, I interviewed him on a debrief for the mortgage coach community. So for all you out there that, you consider yourself an innovator, you want to be an innovator, or you want to learn from innovators, I think it's a super interesting call, and I highly recommend you check it out. So with that said, I am going to kick off the first topic and just officially start the conversation around what are you currently doing to learn faster? And I guess as I set up that topic, and I'm going to throw it to you first, Todd, with ideas, I also did a post saying, who believes that the ultimate competitive advantage is the skill of learning, unlearning, and relearning. So I believe that. Hopefully, by the end of this call, you believe that even deeper than you do now. Why don't we do this? Todd, why don't you share a couple ideas and strategies from your perspective? And then, Kristen, why don't you go second? Michelle, you go third. And then I'll look for someone to raise their hand from the audience. And just for the next 20 to 30 minutes, let's share what are your best ideas and strategies to learn faster. Sound good, guys?
Love it. Love it. And I certainly know my mother was a teacher, but I'm no expert on learning. And when I think of learning with loan officers, I think primarily it really comes down to focusing on what it is that you want to learn. And I always start off with scripting, right? And so, Dave just shined a light on Jeremy Forcier. We know Jeremy is one of the top guys in scripting. And I do believe that there are some people out there who have a natural gift. And I don't believe that I'm one of those people. But what I have learned is that if I actually am committed to it and I take the time and I create a process that works for me, right? So, everyone learns different, right? I think you guys probably know there's different learning styles, whether it's by reading, whether it's by listening, whether it's by doing. And so typically it's a combination of those that I find works for most people. And so I always think if we're talking scripts specifically, I always go through the idea that you need to memorize, then you have to customize it for you, and then you have to internalize it so that you can use it later. And I think that, if you sat in here during the days when I'm originating, when I was talking to a client, I said probably 98% of the same thing every time. It wasn't like word for word like I was a robot, but I had scripts that I'd worked on. And I would say there's building blocks to a great script. And so for me, I memorized it by writing it out. And then I would read it out loud. I wasn't really big into role playing with somebody else, right? So I know a lot of real estate teams that actually have required weekly role play. I've gone through some of the real estate training where you had to have a role play partner and practice scripts. I mean, that definitely works if you've got somebody else out there to do it. I find that most people in the mortgage business are too embarrassed to actually sit there and practice their scripts. So most of my practice came me standing there talking to myself, typically driving in the car. And I won't lie, I had my headphones on so that people would think I was actually talking to somebody rather than talking to myself. But that's a whole nother story. But ultimately, it was write out those blocks of the scripts, right? Write out the rate conversation, write out the, if it was a realtor conversation, right? Write out my realtor conversation. Listen to Mortgage Coach. I mean, go back to Jeremy's the number one interview of last year, Jeremy's 5 questions to ask a realtor, right? And then at the end, I've written that thing out myself, and I've sent it to people before, but they're great questions to use, but they may not be exactly how you want to do it, right? You might think that Jeremy's a little aggressive at the end when he asks the way he asks for those 2 deals. Well, that's where you would customize it for you. And then you got to be able to internalize it so that you can use it over and over again. And I think where people get caught up in the whole script thing is they want to try to memorize it from start to finish. And the problem is it's really rare that you can go, ask the question, they answer it. Then you can ask the next question and they answer it because they're rapid firing back at you. And so that's why I think this idea of different building blocks that you're able to throw in there and make that work. And so it's no different when you're preparing for anything else, right? You're going to get good at a TCA by doing it, right? And so you have to figure out, well, how is the best way for me to learn it? I think first off, it's identifying where to learn it. And I still think that's where the Mortgage Coach community and the Mortgage Coach YouTube channel are so powerful that most of what you want to learn is available here for free. And so I would just be outlining, first, what's the list of the things I want to learn? Second is what are the things that are resources out there so I can create them? What do I already have? And then start writing out your process, your script, then customize it for you. And then just use it and over again. Now, the last thing I would throw out there is if you're not going to practice with someone else who can sharpen you, right? I've had clients who sent me recordings of their calls before. I know a lot of the real estate teams record their calls to sharpen. Again, that's kind of creepy to me, but nonetheless, it's a great way to learn. Observation, right? Have somebody in there live watching you do it always helps, as weird as that is. And then you can always record yourself. I saw some people do that, but I don't know about you. I don't really love listening to myself. So that's not something I did a lot, but I can tell you that when I have done it, like when I went to Toastmasters and they would record my speeches, as painful as it was to watch me do my speeches, I learned a lot when I watched it. So I think that there is opportunity there. I can tell you that right now I'm recording a lot of my content just so that at some point I can start putting it out there. And as I watch it, I'm like, so I'm working on getting better. And that really just comes down to better preparation and better walkthrough. So hopefully that's a good start to kick it off. Dave, Michelle, Kristen, who wants to take a swap at it next or ask me questions?
Great, thanks. That was, I can't hear you, Dave. Do you want me to go next?
Let me just say something real quick. Sorry for being the rookie, the JV player that forgot to unmute myself. So if you do have questions for Todd, post those either in Facebook or in our group. Do want to shout out to Sean. I will get you, Sean had asked for a link to the Jeremy Forcier video. I'll get that for you in a minute, Sean, and I'll tell you how to get it. And he also made the comment that Rene Rodriguez and Roberto Monaco are his two favorite scripts. So those are also in the community. I'll show everybody where you can get to those in a minute. So Todd, I do want you to be thinking as we wrap this thing up, what are, like, if you had a checklist of start here, kind of 1, 2, 3 from a coach's perspective, be thinking about how you're going to wrap a bow around this after everybody goes. So if you could do that, Todd. And then Kristen, you're next, and then Michelle, and then the community.
Oh. Sorry. Okay. So I want to reiterate a couple things that we learned at the very beginning of the formation of this whole group, which was setting aside jam sessions and really time blocking in order to set aside time to learn something or to focus on a particular project. And but as something, I've done training for a lot of different mortgage companies and tried to help people learn something or adopt a new strategy that is in the midst of a really busy day. And I know when you're learning something, it feels like a luxury or something you really it gets put lower on your priority list. So sometimes, you don't have a ton of time to set aside. But I would say that the most important strategies that we found to helping people learn something or adopt a new challenge is one, consistency, like Todd was talking about, setting aside a time every single week. And maybe it's for us, I know we're setting timers, like we're delivering an email with an action step once a week, or and you can do that for yourself as well, where you're actually getting some kind of, setting it in your calendar or setting up some kind of recurring process. And then if you're doing it with a team, you're much more likely to actually set aside that time because you have the accountability factor. So you know that you're going to be talking about it with your team. I would encourage everyone, if you are going to be doing something like practicing your scripts or learning a new kind of mobile skill or whatever it is, that you allocate time in your weekly team meetings or whenever you have those meetings to just discuss it. At least bring it up and ask people to join you on those challenges so that you are then encouraged to do that. And everyone knows one of the best ways to learn is to teach someone. So if you know that you're going to be teaching your team or bringing some kind of insight from whatever you're learning to your team, then you're much more likely to be able to actually learn and force yourself to reduce any procrastination. And then the other thing is to set short wins up, short milestones you can reach to. So if you're just generally saying, I want to be better at something, it's going to be a lot harder to learn and really set goals or really achieve any kind of real progress, rather than if you actually set aside a goal of, okay, I want to have 100 more followers on Facebook by the next 60 days, and you really set a goal for, I'm improving my social media presence and this is my next step to get there. So I think setting up short wins that are achievable within, I would say, 60 or 30 days or less, so that you have some kind of immediate tangible goal. The team, consistency, and then lastly, just know your working style. For me, and it depends on what you're learning and how you're learning. Maybe it's on the go. But for me, I know I need to, if I'm going to really learn something and really set aside time to make some kind of progress on something, I need to be in a really, like, my setting is typically like sitting on the ground with papers and a whiteboard everywhere, and just looking, like, I've got loud music going. It's not the typical, sitting in an office with other people around me that really distracts me. So be aware of what your learning style is so that you can accommodate that at the times that are going to be best fitting for you. But I think that, like I said, the consistency, the team factor, and the setting up short milestones are going to be really key to making sure that you're successful growing as a team as well as an individual.
I love that, Kristen, and such a great reminder, setting up the jam sessions and collaborative learning. I want to share my desktop real quick. This picture you're seeing right now was a picture that was posted in our Facebook group earlier in the week, and it was a branch manager in Southern Oregon, or Middle Oregon, Salem, and he was doing a branch meeting, and he was featuring a mortgage coach video from our YouTube channel. So obviously, I love that he was using Mortgage Coach and they were learning how to use Mortgage Coach better. But I think this is a good example of, as leaders, are you scheduling time in jam sessions to collaboratively learn as a team? Because let's face it, it is hard to self-discipline yourself to do that. And most top producers do this. They do schedule jam sessions. They do schedule time to learn new things. But even top loan officers need help. They need reminders. They need accountability. So I just want to throw it out there to everybody. If you're on this call and you are a branch manager, that think about this coming week, scheduling whatever the appropriate time is for your culture and your company to learn something, put your team together and do it. And then as a leader to your team, help your loan officers schedule time themselves. And by the way, if you're not a branch manager, you could go to your branch manager and say, hey, why don't we do more thought leadership around here? Why don't we schedule more team meetings and push it? So before we move on to the next speaker, Todd, is there anything you want to say about what Kristen just said?
No, she crushed it as I expected. I was making some notes. I think that, right, that collaborative piece with your team is huge. I think that the jam session piece is totally necessary. And so I would just be encouraging you all to be thinking about, okay, what here resonates with me, and be making notes so you can sort of build out what your process is. So Dave gave me that homework assignment. I'm building it out. I took what I was doing, I'm adding in what Kristen's doing, and now I'm going to add in whatever Michelle has to say.
Before we do that, does anybody in the audience have a question for Kristen or a comment? Raise your hand. Remember, this is a mastermind. While we came here with the four of us to facilitate and lead, I want to bring in people from the audience. Anybody have a question for Kristen? Going once, going twice. By the way, after Michelle goes, I'm going to, even if you don't raise your hand, I'm going to call on someone. So please be ready to participate.
Remember,
and raise your hand.
We call that empower. Remember, we empower him, Dave. That's what we're doing. We're not calling him out. We're just going to empower him to be part of the conversation today.
All right. I'm going to be empowering someone in the next few minutes. With that said, Michelle, you are up.
Kristen, first of all, thank you. I am going to integrate into my thing the email action step every week. I think that is like brilliant. It's something that I'm missing in my setup. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'm a little bit unconventional, or maybe conventional. I'm not sure. I start with my big goal. What's the big thing that I want to do? And I start broad. I say, okay, if I want to increase my business by 20%, how am I going to do that? And then I start breaking it down backwards. And so I worked backwards a little bit. So like my goals this year were to make sure to diversify the way my leads were coming in, and where I was getting my business from, because I knew the market was shifting. I didn't want to be stuck just on purchases, and I certainly didn't want to be stuck just on refinances, because I knew that I would, probably have a really big lull spot. So what I did was I sat there and said, okay, I took four things. Where do I want my business to come through? And I executed on all four things, and I broke them down individually. How do I keep my key realtors? And then I go down that path, and that's the jam session for me. Then I went, okay, I want to keep with my past clients. That's where the mortgage coach and the annual reviews came in. So I kept that one, and I worked on a script on that, not scripting because I don't script that well. Then I wanted my leads. I work with Zillow a lot. How do I capture that a little bit more? And then what I did this year, a little bit different, because a lot of people have gotten away from it, I went back to radio. And that is becoming very helpful for me, because it's not only purchase leads, but it's also refinance leads, and it's also exposure for me. And then what I do is I come up with a process. Okay, how do I execute on each and every one of these? And I don't do all 4 at once. I picked one at a time and worked on one till I finished it. Probably one of my biggest faults is, again, shiny objects. I see so many shiny objects and I want to do all of them at once. And what I've learned through this class, through Darren Hardy, through my coaching, is that I don't do well when I spread myself so thin. So I focused on radio over the last 60 days. All my focus has been on radio and how do I develop that process. I do a jam session 3 times a week. I time block. I have a time block every day. There's always a blocked off time, either for me, for phone calls, to call realtors, to call past clients. And then I'm consistent. With the exception of last Thursday, I'm pretty consistent on everything that I do. I'm not so rigid that I don't beat myself up if I miss a jam session. I allow myself the opportunity to have a free block, but then I have to reschedule that block a little bit more. And as far as scripting, I'm not a big scripter, so I'm kind of a feel person. So I go and I do role play though. I'll role play with one of my colleagues, or I'll role play with one of my coworkers, or I'll role play with somebody who's not even in the business, just to say, how would this go on with you? Do you understand what I'm saying? Am I speaking in language that you understand? Or am I speaking too much in the technical, mortgage lingo? And I always, rebalance at the end of the week. Every Friday, I have 30 minutes that's just mine. And like Kristen said, I find my safe space. I usually have 80s music rocking out, and I'll put my headset in, and I'll have my dogs with me, and I'll just kind of reflect on the rest of the week. And, what could I have done better? What do I need to do better? If it's specific to this topic of, leads or radio or what the process flow, I look at what didn't work this week and how I can tweak that a little bit. But I also give myself usually 90 days before I make any monster changes on any new process flow that I put in. That's what I do.
Love it, Michelle. So you said 80s music. I just, my son turned me on to, I miss the 80s playlist in Apple Music. So like your style there, I'm usually doing like a YouTube playlist or something like that. So here's what we're going to do now, guys. We are going to go to the community. I am going to look for people that have raised their hands. I'm also going to pull up my screen real quick. Todd, in a minute here, if you can confirm that you can see it, because I just want to make sure that everybody who posted, make sure that their posts are recognized. So if you're on this call and you like one of these ideas, give it a like. So let's go through. When we posted this yesterday, what was what's the number one thing you're doing? We got repetition from Jeremy. No doubt, you got to get in your reps. When it comes to learning the mortgage coach, total cost analysis, we're like the fastest person to 10 reps of its ECA. That's how you learn it. Jeremy Forcier said he listens to books on tape at 1.5 speed. That was a hack that you shared several times, Todd. I personally find it hard to really consume that content at 1.5. I've got to ratchet it down to 1.2. And then, the only comment I wanted to make here is Jeremy said that he does this while running. And I find, and I don't know, Todd, if you find this, that when I do learning while I'm doing something else, I personally kind of need to do it twice. Like I when I'm driving, when I'm doing things, I'm often listening to an audio book, but I also find that I have to, by the way, I think I always have to listen to things 2 or 3 times to retain them. But if I'm running or literally doing something else, I always need to do it a couple times. What are your thoughts on that, Todd? You're muted, Todd.
Rookie. I know. I was like, okay, I knew I was. I have the exact same problem. It's a whole multitasking thing. And so I listen to my stuff on double speed, primarily because I'm going to rewind and then take notes, right? I can hit the back 15 seconds and double. Oh, yeah, dude, I'm all on double. There's some stuff I listen to on triple speed, but I think I'm getting older. I'm 1 month away from the big 5-0. And so I'm actually a lot on 2.5 now on the audiobooks. But, it depends what it is and how much I want to take notes. But I'm like you. I walk to the grocery store from my house. Just one of my things, I'll listen to a podcast, and oftentimes I'll take a picture of where it is that I was, that when I heard something great, so I can go back to it. and then re-listen to it and take notes. It kind of depends what it is. I'm trying something new. It was taught to me by a realtor I know who's a pretty big producer, and it's I'm actually reading a book while listening to it on double speed. And I'm not sure I'm sold on it yet. He said 1.5 speed, and maybe that's my problem, but I'm about 3/4 of the way through, so I'll report back if I think it works. My other hack I'm going to learn is Tim Ferriss just published something on how to learn to be a speed reader in like 5 minutes. And I started reading it and I got distracted and didn't finish it, like a lot of things I do in life. And so I'll have to go back, and I put that on my list of things to do this weekend when I'm going to steal Michelle's word, when I rebalance today, since I'm all about the Friday review. It's just such a big thing for me.
So, by the way, you made me think of something. Of all the books that I, either read or scanned last year, the one that I did both the book and the audiobook at the same time was Jocko Willink's Extreme Ownership. And I did that just because I thought there was so many great principles in it. And by the way, I also enjoyed listening to him and Leaf in the audiobook. So, I got entertainment value, I got good value, and I was trying to learn it at a level of teaching it. So, I only did that once last year. But I learned that book probably better than any book I've read in 5 years. So that is a good idea. Hey, Kristen, anything you want to add there? Do you listen to audiobooks?
Yeah, so I actually find that I need to listen to audiobooks or a podcast. I love podcasts, but I will listen to those on a faster speed also while I'm doing something else. Like if I'm running or if I'm exercising in some way, that helps me to concentrate my mind, because if I'm not doing anything, or if I'm doing something that's too distracting, I won't listen to it at all. So I have a really hard time listening and retaining information unless I'm writing it down or I'm channeling my body in some way that, like with running, you're in a little bit of pain. And so it's enough to tone down the distractions in my mind that I can actually listen. That said, I do absolutely have to go back to write stuff down later. I can't learn anything if I don't write it down. It might be lost in my notes forever, but the act of writing it down makes me retain it. So I love Todd's recommendation for taking a screenshot or a photo of where you are in the audiobook to go back to, because that's always my issue is I will hear something that I really like and then I can't go back to write it down. So, but yeah, I think that I think it's kind of everyone finding their own working style and how. For me, I'm very distracted. It's hard for me to focus and retain information. So finding those little hacks are super helpful and make the world of a difference. And I also think education is so important. And so, finding a way that you can then pass that on to your team is really important as well.
Yeah, no doubt. And I wanted to make sure everybody was aware, like if you listen to things in audiobook, I use that feature all the time where I skip it back, 30 seconds, and re-listen to that. And then down in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a little place where you can clip. So if there was something, because, I'll often be listening to it while I'm driving, and I don't have that time, but I can hit the back 30 space and re-listen to it. And then to your point, if you could save it and then go write it down, I think it's a good idea. Michelle, anything you want to add on this particular topic? Do you do this any of these things?
Well, I can't listen to audiobooks. This is like a sad thing. I think something happened to me in my childhood, but I fall asleep anytime I hear the constant, the calm voice, whatever. I'm like out like a light. And maybe it's because I work too much, but I am pen to paper. I use this Levenger book. It is my lifeline because I have to write it down and then I'll input it into the computer so I have the notes forever. But I've learned better by touching it first and then putting it into the computer, and then it just retains better. And I find as I'm getting a little bit older that my short-term memory is not as good and my long-term memory is kind of blowing a little bit. So I need the constant reminder, like I'll go, okay, yeah, that's right. Farouk is doing this, and okay, I got it now. And I feel I can remember that by putting it on pen first and then putting it into the computer.
Love that. So by the way, I'm going to be empowering someone shortly. I just want to keep going through these notes. So Danny says, let's see, expected to go as deep as possible, find others that are further down the path, ask for their advice. So masterminding, getting best practices. If you have a team or peer group, teach them what you are learning. I mean, no doubt. I think that's been mentioned today, but just, I think, Todd, if you could put a big circle around that, learning things at a level that you're a teacher is critical. And then here we go. He's doing a lot of podcasts. Let's go down and see what Ken Perry says. By the way, Todd, have you read any of these? Do you want to kind of pull out some of your thoughts from some of these comments?
I haven't read them, so therefore you should keep going.
I will keep going. Well, netting out Ken Perry, he says collaboration is the key. So you're noticing a lot of things where it's like social learning. It's multiple people learning, and you're also seeing this thread of learning at a level that you can teach. He also does audiobooks and TED Talks. TED Talks are great. I don't listen to enough, but I get a lot of value when I do. Learning to things that you teach them. So I think covered that. Then Brett Elmer pretty much said, hey, everything Ken said, I agree. How you learn to the level that you teach. Michelle, repetition. And Sean, working on currently a number of reasons. So what's this? I'm clicking on a video that Sean is sharing with us.
That's the link to the Tim Ferriss How to Speed Read. So that's a great value that Sean threw in there. I was messing with it because he threw the link in questions. I was looking at what it was, and I think what the key is with that post, right? Those are some of the who's who of the mortgage industry, right? You've got people that are doing, hundreds of millions of dollars in there, and you've got Ken Perry, who's a thought leader in the industry, and so there's just great value in there. So I would spend a few minutes, sort of identifying that. And it's funny that you mentioned TED Talks, Dave, because ultimately, you're throwing out so much content right now. All the things that you're recording, it went from once a week to now twice a week to I don't know, it seems like 22 times a week you're posting an article and an interview that you did, and it's just so crazy. So I don't even have time to go outside of the mortgage coach community now to absorb any other content because you just keep filling us up with some massive value.
Well, we are trying. And by the way, Sean had asked where the Jeremy Forcier video is. So the one with 5 questions is the number 2 video in Real World Scripts. And then also the number 1 video, it just came out. I mean, literally it's a couple days old. It's Time to Work Harder and Smarter, must watch. Also, Tim Brahim's Setting Up the Next Deal script. I mean, this is just an incredible script. Highly recommend it. And then I did also put this in the number 4 spot. This is Kelly Marsh, $100 million producer in Santa Barbara. Kills it. I mean, has an incredible borrower experience, incredibly successful, and she significantly upgraded her borrower experience. I think it was August or September of last year. And I interviewed her 2 months ago on, hey, what did you do to upgrade your borrower experience? Mortgage Coach was one of the things that she did to upgrade it. But the reason I want to showcase this video right now is not only is it a great top producer interview, not only does it talk about how she uses Mortgage Coach, but I actually asked her questions on how did you learn, and what advice would you have to other loan officers to accelerate their learning. So great interview if you just want to think about accelerating learning. Also, I interviewed a loan officer by the name of John Downs last year, and it was a 20-minute interview, and all we focused on is how did you and your team learn to use Mortgage Coach? And what did you do to accelerate your learning? And I would say that not only was it a good video to learn to use Mortgage Coach, you could just take Mortgage Coach out of every time you use Mortgage Coach and put in CRM. It would have been the same thing. Or anything. Like right now, I'm personally trying to learn how to use Slack, which, by the way, has been really easy to learn. But it's something we're implementing within our organization. And if you just put your mind to it, it's not that hard. But check out those interviews if you want more content on that. So,
hey Dave, can you shine a light real quick on the? Can you interrupt you? Sorry. Can you shine a light real quick on the new loan officer playlist? Because Sonny Knowles asking what advice you'd have for a new loan officer, and I think that that your playlist in there for new loan officers would be a great place, Sonny, for you to start. I think there's just so much value there. And I would be going through there and I'd be engaging in the community and asking questions in the community because, I'm seeing questions that, that are just as unique as, hey, which iPhone do you want? Hey, what printer scanner do you have? And those are some basic questions. And then we've got other people asking really big things around scripting and realtors, and there's just so much there. And, certainly we're so thrilled to have so many of you on the call today and continue to contribute, because it seems like we're approaching 3,000 members right now, Dave, right? I think we're at 2,800 and change. So, I should say your homework should be when you get off here is to add a member, because you can do that in the top, kind of the middle right on the page. If you have any other friends in the biz, we'd love to have them in there. I think we should make that push this next week to hit 3,000.
Yeah, that would be a great idea. Hey, anybody, feel free to invite people. And I'm seeing that feature used a lot more. I know Shane Kidwell, a millennial next-gen loan officer that's killing it. He was a fireman and part-time loan officer for a number of years. Last year was his first full-time year in the mortgage business, and he did $40 million in production. And I not only interviewed him last week, but I noted the way I interviewed him is I noticed that he had referred a bunch of top loan officers into the group, and I'm like, I got to call Shane and see what he's up to. So that is a great feature, and thanks for shining a light on that, Todd. So I am going to stop sharing my screen. Folks, it is time for me to empower someone on today's call. I know that I am going to be inviting Tammy Butler to a call soon. So Tammy, I have unmuted you. Hopefully you're in a place where you can talk real quick. How you doing, Tammy?
Hey. Yes, I'm here. Hi. Thanks for having me on the call. This is exciting stuff. First time I've been on a Mastermind call. My gosh, you used to have to go to conferences to do this. So thank you.
I know.
All about evolving, all about learning. I think that's all very important. And when I was a top producing originator, education was definitely my thing. That's how I got most of my business with the people that were my referral partners. But one of the things that I struggled with quite a bit was trying to get information in a, what we'll call a Cliff Notes version. I might be dating myself there. So for the millennials, that's where we kind of didn't want to read a book, and so we read bullet points. For our college.
Well, by the way, millennials just go to Google. They call it Googling.
So anyway, long story short, I was so intrigued by that last year I ended up buying a company that's 10 years old called Mortgage Currency, and I loved it because for years I subscribed to it, and it was one of those things where I didn't have time to necessarily go out and look up the regulations for every flipping thing that I needed to have an answer for. And so they have the reference charts, they had the experts, they took all of the agency updates and guidelines and distilled them down into bullet points for me. And so that's been what I have been working on for the last 6 months or so, and I'm so excited about it. So thanks for calling me out on that. But in any event, that was really how I got by for a long time, trying to get through the agency updates, trying to figure out what I needed to know. And if you talk about a time suck, that's a time suck when you have to go through everything that you have to read through each month just to stay up to date and relevant with what's going on in the market.
No doubt. Hey, Tammy, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to share the screen real quick. One of the questions we asked this week is, what are you currently working to learn and or a skill working to improve? By the way, I'm going to edit this later and just say and or a skill or habit, because that is one thing, Todd, I want to make sure we cover today. There's learning and knowing, and then there's doing. And so it's important that, we really not only make time to learn so that we know, it's time that we make time to turn that, what we know, into a skill that we're actually executing. So let's make sure we cover that. But Tammy, one question I wanted to ask you, Maria said one of the things that she's doing is FHA guidelines, 30 minutes a day. So for any loan officer that is either new and they have a lot of learning they need to do, or let's just say anybody that feels like, hey, I need to be more effective at knowing guidelines and knowing information, would you mind just sharing the resources that are available out there? And it sounds like your new company might be one of them. But also, if you could share, just knowing the industry as well as you do, how much time should people spend, loan officers, proactively learning guidelines? So if you could just share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there are a lot of great resources out there. Certainly Mortgage Currency is one of them. They've done a great job in distilling down that information, joining groups on LinkedIn. But really, Dave, the issue that I find a lot of times is that new originators are coming in under the experienced originators as loan officer assistants or junior loan officers, and they're struggling to try to keep up with what is happening. And we have a lot of teams that subscribe because the primary originators that's doing all the production is very, very busy. They're always on the phone call. They're always out trying to get something done. And junior loan officer has to get back to somebody very quickly, and they don't really have the reference materials or the educational components necessarily that they need in order to answer a question. And they're afraid to go and seem like, hey, I don't want to seem like I don't know what I'm talking about, so I'm afraid to ask my primary loan officer this question, or they think I ask too many questions. So the first thing I would say to new originators is get that thought out of your head. The primary originator who's been doing this for 20 plus years is there to answer your questions. It's going to help you. It's going to help them. So don't forget to do that. But also interact and engage with your LinkedIn communities, your Facebook communities, certainly these mastermind events. Subscribe to things like a mortgage currency so that you have resources that you don't feel like you're just kind of out there floundering and wondering what's going on. And then as things begin to evolve, and we see the programs doing this all the time, like Fannie Mae is really hot on their home style program right now. So as these things start to evolve, start to look at that and say, gosh, am I missing a niche because it's too difficult that the people who are already seasoned in my area may not want to participate in this because they don't know enough about it and they've got enough business. Look at those niches and see if you can't learn something that would help evolve your business in a little bit better way. So I hope those tips helped.
They did. I love it. And I want to remind folks that are posting questions, we'll try to get those and go to webinar. If anybody has a question for Tammy, come on in. Michelle and Kristen, do either of you guys have a question for Tammy before we put her back on mute?
I'll jump in. Dave, I had to walk away from my video for a second, but Tammy, oh my gosh, what great advice, especially for the new loan officer. I get to put myself finally in the seasoned loan officer category, which is finally, I don't know, it took like 20 years to get there. But I like answering questions and I like to help people. I would just say, make sure to, schedule time with them and just don't pop in their office and say, hey, do you have a minute? Just say, hey, I would love, 20 minutes of your time so that they can time block off to help you. But you don't be afraid. Fear kills everything. And thank you. Thank you for sharing, Tammy.
Cool. What about you, Kristen?
No questions from me. I think it was just a really great summary and great approach. So I appreciate the insights, Tammy.
All right. So Tammy, anything else you want to share before we put you back on mute? And again, you can always raise your hand again to any other thoughts before we put you back on mute.
No, I'm good. I just thanks for including me. This has been very interesting time spent today, and I appreciate it.
Good. Well, hey, Tammy, one more favor. If you could, one, answer that one loan officer's question in our group, let them know about mortgage currency, and feel free to put a post, sharing mortgage currency and anything that you think would be valuable to our community, if you don't mind.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right. So again, raise your hand again if you have a question. I do not see anybody with hands raised. So Todd, let's do this. Let's wrap a bow around the conversation we've had so far, and then let's do another topic. So Michelle, I'm going to let you go first, see if you've got a topic. Kristen, if we have time for a third topic, I'll let you bring it in. But Todd, from a coaching perspective, if you can kind of wrap a bow around what's been covered so far so that people can do more than just learn, they can put it into action.
Sure. So I just kind of made some notes, right? Because you guys said kind of what's a checklist, right? So for me, it's a brain dump of all the ideas, right? So you've got to schedule quiet time, maybe like Kristen talked about with your whiteboard out, but brain dump, here's all the things maybe I can do, right? Because oftentimes you're like, oh, wait, there's another shiny object. Oh, there's another one, because there's so much stuff we keep hearing about. So I always keep a running idea list in Evernote. And so just brain dump the ideas that you have now and then prioritize those to what it is that you want to work on, and then start looking for the resources that support that. And again, I'm always going to start with the mortgage coach community because most of it's already there. And then there's some other good things, right? Dave mentioned the Google. That's always a great way to do it. And unfortunately, we don't have Cliff Notes anymore. Well, actually, they maybe probably do exist, but that would be great. And then you got to schedule the jam sessions, right? Kristen nailed that one, right? We all started here with Darren Hardy. Those of you who don't know what a jam session is, it's just on time. It's time where you work away, right? So earlier this week, it was 70 degrees in Scottsdale, and I dropped my daughter at school, and instead of going into my office, I found a restaurant and with a patio and literally took the quiet corner spot, and I worked there for 2 hours uninterrupted, phone off, email off, so I could sit there and get work done. And then again, what you want to learn, I write it out. Again, we talked about scripting. I practice it. I sharpened it. I love the other two things that Kristen threw in there and Michelle, right? That you have to teach it and then maybe figure out, can you add in some, add in some accountability. And then the other part is I often struggle from this myself. And Michelle said, hey, I work on one thing at a time, right? She picked her 4 things out and did one at a time. And I would encourage you to start one thing and then finish it. I'm like king of having 75 projects going at once. And so one way to always do that is to have folders going with whatever projects it is that you want to do. So, right now I've got different projects that I've got going. Each one's in a plastic folder labeled in my backpack. And at least when I have an idea on it, I can just scribble there's a blank piece of paper in each one where I can scribble the idea on it. I don't have to execute on it now, but then the idea is not lost. And so some process like that would probably be the way to do it. And then, I certainly love anywhere you can save time, right? So we talked about the audiobook thing. We talked about the podcast thing on a faster speed. You can do the same thing on YouTube. That's one of my favorite hacks. And then you look what other resources out there, right? Tammy, I didn't know that you own Mortgage Currency. That's cool. It's a great product. I've used it in the past when I was originating. And so it's a great opportunity for you to say, okay, is there some way I can shorten up the time it's going to take for me to acquire the knowledge? And there's a lot of tools out there. And if you don't know what it is you're trying to learn, where to find it, then throw it in the mortgage coach community, because I'm sure there's someone else here who's really been looking at it. So that would be my bow. Anyone have any sharpening to my bow?
One thing I was trying to find, sorry, go ahead.
I'll go last.
He was talking, I was trying to find my Cliffs Notes that I use, and it's called SoundView. It's a really cool program where you can download almost any book. They're shortened version, like a 2-page PDF of it, and so it's really great if you want to consume a lot of information really quickly. But that's great.
Yeah, no, good one. And I'm going to show my screen one more time because that made me think of 2 things. One, one of the reasons why I put Simon Sinek's video as the first video for new loan officers is he just talks about the power of why. And so we covered a lot of tactics, strategies, but I always think, whenever you want to change a habit, you want to learn something new, it does start with why. And the more clear you can get and personal, and I do this now, like literally when one of my team said, hey, I think we should start using Slack. Our dev team uses it. I okay, that's great. I'll think about, should the company use it? Should I use it? And I took a few minutes. I use Evernote like you do, Todd, and I wrote down why. Why should we use it? Why should I use it? And I only spent, I know I didn't spend 15 minutes. I think I spent more than 5 minutes, but I wrote down that why. And I felt like that helped me because I'm learning quickly. I'm killing it. So I do want to remind everybody, it starts with why. And, everything you want to learn, be intentional about that. Also, it made me remember, I found this resource, Brian Reynolds, I don't know how many years ago, but it was the second time I interviewed Hal Elrod. And I hadn't read his book, The Miracle Morning, but I don't know what Google search I did. I think it might have been Google. I typed in the book, and then I said summary, like Miracle Morning summary. And Brian Reynolds had done like a 20 or 30 minute debrief. So it really was kind of he read the book and then he had a chalkboard behind him and he scribbled out all the key concepts. It was like mind blowing. And I have interviewed Brian multiple times now, but I think we have an incredible YouTube channel. But one of the people that I think has one of the best YouTube channels on the planet is Brian Johnson. And he reviews a lot of books, and he does a lot of key concepts. So I'm showing that on my screen. But, great resource and a lot of book summaries for books, that are just general market. The Miracle Morning book review is incredible, and I will share that in our Facebook group later today so that you guys have that. All right, so we got 10 minutes left. I'm going to stop sharing my desktop. Michelle, any other topics that we should cover in the last 10 minutes of today's call?
I'm going to put out a challenge to everybody, and let's, right? So, two things. If everybody can do me 2 favors by next week, is one, if you're not on the Darren Daily, sign up. It's not about mortgages, it's about life, and it applies to every part of your life. And Todd and I were talking about it. I was trying to get the video up, but it was already gone. There was one on Wednesday, and it was about a child that had called the butterfly effect, and his, basically doesn't have any skin. And Darren talks about this. If you ever having a bad day, you're never having a bad day after you watch that video. It just puts things in perspective, and it's relevant. Everything he says is relevant. I find, and maybe it's because I'm searching, but I find something in what he says, and maybe it's top of mind because I start my morning every morning with that video. It downloads to your phone. It's super great. The next thing that I would say is for any new loan officer, because we've kind of got into new loan officers a little bit, is when you're talking about hearing our jam sessions, when you're talking about some of the things that we're talking about not multitasking, about not letting the shiny objects distract us. If you haven't signed up for the Darren Hardy Insane Productivity class, this is how this whole thing started. Do it. It is worth it. It's worth the investment. If you don't invest in yourself, nobody else is going to invest in you. But invest in that, because I don't know, Todd, Dave, Kristen, if you guys, I know Todd's been through it. If you guys have been through it, it is life changing for you and how you do your business. And it will free up so much more time for you. That's my challenge for you guys.
All right. So a couple of things, guys. I showed my screen again, and I will make a couple posts. One, if you want to sign up for Insane Productivity and get the Mortgage Coach discount, there is a link right here. I think it's a $500 discount. Also, this whole mastermind started with Darren, when we all went through Insane Productivity almost, going on 2 years. And I will get a link to the butterfly effect from Todd, or not from Todd, but from Darren, and I'll share that in the group. And also, if you do sign up for, Darren Daily as a mortgage coach, you will be on the radar, so you get mortgage-specific content in addition to the Darren Daily. So I will get you guys a couple links from the mortgage coach community to sign up for both Darren Daily and to sign up for his program. But I love that, Michelle, and I'm going to check that out myself. So let's see. I'm going to stop sharing my screen again. We got 7 minutes left. We can always wrap it up early, but let's just do rapid fire real quick. And by the way, if you do have a question, you can unmute yourself and we'll bring you in, or you can post that question. But we're going to do rapid fire with the group here. I'll look for questions and we'll wrap up today's call. So, Kristen, any final thoughts from you as we wrap up today's call?
Yeah, final thoughts are social sharing or social learning has been a big topic that's come up frequently, and I would encourage everyone. We're always looking for content to share on social media and be a thought leader and have something to contribute to your referral partners and your community. So as you learn something, you can tie those together. You can look for things to learn and then share. And in that process, you're helping yourself learn a lot better. So if you're listening to a good podcast or you're reading a good article, then jot down 3 main points or 1 main point about it and then share on social media, or send over to some referral partners that you think would be a good fit for that. But that process will help you look like a great guide and a value add in the industry. And it will also help you in the process learn a lot better. So that's kind of my last tip.
Well, first of all, that was huge, Kristen, because not only did it give everybody, a biz dev strategy, but it also helped everybody learn faster. So, that might be one of the best ideas of the day. Also, folks, Kristen is very modest, but she has founded a company called modernloanofficer.com, and it is a learning platform. So if you want to be the best possible modern loan officer, highly recommend that you become part of our audience. I mean, it's not expensive. It's very low cost. It's much less than a Starbucks habit, a monthly Starbucks habit. So check that out. Connect with Kristen on that. And huge idea. Michelle, any final thoughts or words from you?
Okay, I didn't want to be a rookie and forget to unmute myself. I would say repetition on what you want to do. Don't overcommit right now. Just pick a topic and finish it, because I don't know, I have a sense of, I love when I can check that off my box. I mean, I use Todd's books all the time, as well as my books. And I do checklists, and I'm still, a processor by nature, so I'm kind of task oriented. So I'd like to be able to check something off. And really just invest in yourself, you guys. I mean, and don't let, this market right now is a lot of chatter on the outside. Just keep it on the outside. Don't let it affect you. You can do it.
I love that. And by the way, that's a good plug for Win by Noon. Win by Noon is an incredible learning tool, because it disciplines you to manage all your key tasks, gives you a place to document the things you want to learn. Huge tool. And that thing you said about repetition, when I interview top loan officers, and I'm just going to use mortgage coaches as an example, that adopted it, it's like they did their 10 reps and it didn't take them 10 weeks. When you hear that interview with Kelly Marsh, it was 2 days. Like she did 5 reps one day, 5 reps the next day. She learned it. So if there's something that you're not learning, knuckle down, schedule your jam sessions, check it off the list, one thing at a time, get in your reps, learn it. But I see so many people, it's like they're trying to learn too many things, or they're just not doing the reps on any one thing, So Todd, you close it out. Final thought.
All right, 2 things. I'm going to give something away in a second because Kristen gave me some inspiration. But the first thing is I'm going to do a quick plug. Joe Pathur from Mortgage Coach, Jen Duplessis, our other mentor, and myself will all be at connect2018.org. It's the National Association of Minority Mortgage Bankers Association in Atlanta last week. I will be teaching Win by Noon, how top performers, because there's going to be realtors there too, in real estate and mortgage, win their day by noon. And so I'm excited to be giving that presentation there. So there'll be a few of us there. So I do want to throw anyone who's in that area, you should check it out, connect2018.org. And then I actually did what Kristen said. Some of you know that I had lunch with Gary Vee a couple weeks ago, and I have a post series because someone said, well, what are your top takeaways? So I dripped those out on Instagram. So follow me on Instagram, hint. And then one of those posts I actually have in there, I've got about, 9 or 10 copies of Crushing It left. And so I threw out there, if anyone wanted a copy of Crushing It, just a comment and then DM me your address. So any of you who are on here, it's while supplies last. I think my wife, who's an attorney, says I have to say that kind of thing. But if anyone wants a copy of Crushing It, I've got a handful of extras and I would love to gift it to you. So just go there to Instagram, follow me, comment, DM me, and it's yours.
Love that. So practicing what you preach, love that. And we do have a thread going. I am listening to Crush It on audiobook right now. So would love anybody getting big takeaways for the mortgage coach community. What can we learn from that book? So Todd, thank you for giving away the book. I might just take you up on one of those, even though I feel bad. I'll see if the community gets them all first.
All right, perfect.
Guys. This call is going into wrap mode. I am going to post a poll question just because we always like to know, what did you think of today's session? Did you love it? Did we exceed your expectations of value? Did you get some solid takeaways? If you're a guest and you want to learn more about Mortgage Coach, click the last one. I want to demo a Mortgage Coach, and we are going to wrap it up. Guys, we got great reviews. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending today's Mastermind, and have a fantastic weekend. This call is...
See you guys all next week.
Bye now. See you, Todd.
Take it easy, my friend.